Hello and welcome to CSGV at Home. My name is Andrew Patrick. I'm the Director of Political Communications at the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. Today, we are joined by our Executive Director, Josh Horwitz. Josh, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me today, Andrew. I really appreciate it.
So we've talked about this before. In 2009, you wrote the book, Guns, Democracy, and the Insurrectionist Idea. It predicted a lot of what we're seeing. Are we now in a time period where the insurrectionist idea is now our insurrectionist reality?
It certainly is. I mean, the insurrectionist idea is that political violence has a place in the democratic process. Of course, I wrote the book that political violence is destructive and destroys democratic processes. But somehow we have elected officials who are openly talking about political violence. Political violence does not get any opprobrium from Republican elected officials. It's unbelievable that I warned about this in 2009. Don't let political violence creep into our system, and it clearly has.
And we're seeing this congresswoman from Georgia who has a Facebook record of liking and commenting on ideas of killing elected officials, killing presidents, even President Obama. We saw that she has been harassing school shooting victims in her time prior to being a congresswoman. We saw Andy Harris from Michigan get caught carrying a gun on the floor, who was a few days earlier was in a fist fight nearly in a fist fight on the House floor. So do we need statements from our elected officials? Do we need to put them on record for not supporting political violence?
Look, absolutely. It should be a prerequisite to having elected office in the United States that you disavow political violence. And now for people who are in there, if you're not willing to clearly and unequivocally say, I am against and will not use political violence, you have no right to be in Congress or any other state legislature or any executive for that matter. It is completely anathema to democracy.
Absolutely right. So I think people look at the storming of the Capitol and that's insurrectionism. What we don't really understand, or a lot of people don't understand, is how much the gun lobby and right-wing politics have played into this idea of taking up arms against your government. How much responsibility does the NRA have in our insurrectionist reality?
I think you can draw a straight line from in 2000 with the NRA convention, when Charlton Heston lifted up that musket above his head and said, "Out of my cold, dead hands, Mr. Gore," till today. I think that there's a straight line from the NRA. The NRA popularized the idea of an insurrectionary Second Amendment by using terms like Second Amendment remedies and claiming that the guys with the guns make the rules and the Second Amendment isn't for duck hunting. You can go back and look at the NRA conventions, and there's a litany of calls and threats of political violence. The NRA's in their writings, in their America's First Free magazine has really socialized this idea. And whether they did it because for profit or they really believed it, because who knows with the NRA, right? It's just a bunch of grifters. But they're out there. They're very influential in right-wing politics. They socialize this idea. They're responsible for it. And what's happened is that people have taken them up on and they're pushing for the idea that political violence is part of this process. And it was clear when the NRA went and endorsed candidate Trump at the time, as early as they've ever endorsed anybody. They love the fact that he was willing to use their rhetoric, their insurrectionary rhetoric on the campaign trail, and they endorsed him with that in mind.
So we talked in October following the news about Gretchen Whitmer and the attack against her. As we watch this in real time, I think, were you surprised at all? You spoke about this, how Trump adds fuel to this. Were you surprised at how violent this could have been on January 6th?
Well, I wasn't surprised that there was an attack on the Capitol. I think that was, presaged by weeks of rhetoric and planning. And so I wasn't surprised by that. I was surprised by two things. I was surprised of the absolute lack of response from the Capitol Police, and it seemed like the reinforcements were blocked. So I was very surprised by that. I think we're learning more about that every day. I expected the crowd to be rowdy, maybe to try to break into the Capitol. I expected them to have guns. All that came true. The one image that really surprised me, the jarring image to me, was their attacks on law enforcement. Because for a long time they've said, you know, they want to claim the mantle of Americana. They want to say they're on the side of law enforcement, that law enforcement are with us. So I expect them to go after politicians and electeds. The picture of these folks beating a police officer with a American flag, you know, a pole with a flag on it, was, for me, that was even surprising to me, and just disgusting. But it's part of this evolution. When you tell people that violence is okay, when you tell people violence against electeds is okay, when you tell people violence against law enforcement is okay, some of those people apparently actually take you up on it and believe you.
And finally, what, with this new administration, we're a week in, what can they do to go after this root cause of violent extremism, white supremacy, these paramilitary groups? What is the solution there?
Well, look, I think, you know, yesterday the president signed a number of executive orders on equity, and I think equity is a big part of this, because white supremacy and racism is clearly embedded in the insurrectionary movement. But the other piece of this that's very, very important is not to tolerate insurrection, insurrectionary rhetoric, the idea that the Second Amendment sanctions this for 1 second. That goes for Democratic politicians who have been, I think, too easy on this, and to Republican politicians who have operationalized this. This needs to see, if you're involved, if the administration needs to be vociferous that if you talk about political violence, you don't have a place at the table, you don't have a place in the legislature, you will not get a meeting with the president, we will not do your business. This should be a line that cannot be crossed. That if you even use the rhetoric of violence, you are out. You cannot be part of this process. Now, we'll see what happens if people get actually kicked out of Congress, but the administration has lots of ways to enforce this, from you know, not vetoing legislation, from you know, preventing money and goodies going to different districts, right? And I think the Democratic Party as a whole needs to focus on this, and this needs to be a litmus test. And if someone's using insurrectionist rhetoric, they're out. They can't be at the table. We can't take their ideas seriously, or even their presence seriously. But we need to counter this idea.
And I was even reading yesterday how Merrick Garland was in the DOJ in the 90s and in Oklahoma City, and Timothy McVeigh and the Unabomber. He was kind of the point person on this in the 90s at the DOJ. So with him possibly being the new attorney general, hopefully he makes it a priority.
Absolutely. And prosecution is part of this. I mean, white supremacist insurrectionists, they need to be prosecuted. And, you know, look, I'm all in favor. I think Trump needs to be held accountable through impeachment. I think he's unfit for any office in the country. So prosecutions have to be part of this. If you've committed sedition against the United States, you need to be prosecuted. But it also needs to be an attitude that, as Americans, our gift, the gift that we were given to, is that there will be peaceable transfer of power. That's what the Constitution is about. That is the gift given to this generation, and we cannot blow it. And we need to make sure that we understand that peaceable transfer of power is the bedrock foundation of democracy.
Josh Horwitz, thank you so much. You'll be speaking at a webinar for Wake Forest on February 4th. Is there places where we can direct people to sign up to attend that?
Yeah, you can go to our website, Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, CSGV.org. There'll be some promotion for that. I'm really looking forward to being able to speak with that community in North Carolina.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a great day, Josh.
Yeah, great. Thank you.